It's been a pretty hectic week, so I thought, what better video for kind of a gnarly week on my end than to work on kind of developing the character design from a couple of videos ago and kind of talking through the process and some other projects that I have coming up and kind of vetting y'all's opinion on the matter. So, hi, hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. So, 2 weeks ago, I started working on a character design. I just did some cute little sketches, and now I'm lining it and I'm kind of exploring kind of the poses, the eyes, the hair, how I want it to vibe out. So, if you want to draw alongside me, be sure to tell me about it in the comments below, DM me, tag me if you feel like it. I love to support the people who support me and get cozy, and let's just get into it. So, for those who are new or didn't watch the video where I kind of just sketched out this character and I was kind of talking about some design decisions that I was interested in, basically, the way that I started approaching this character is that I think that she is an orphan who kind of was more or less raised by the forest more than anything, kind of lives in a cottage, very kind of like, um, Snow White energy, maybe, but without the dwarves. Kind of like lives in a cute little cottage, bakes pies that she leaves in the windowsill, even though no rational people would put a pie in the windowsill because it's going to collect bugs. Obviously, just kind of that irrational, like we know better fantasy sort of energy that I don't know. It's cute. It has a nice kind of feeling to it. You know what I mean? Um, and as I've thought about the character design a little bit more, I think that I have a few alterations that I want to make. In the background where I'm sketching this, I did want to sketch on the separate pieces of paper with it on the original spread where I was kind of exploring the design a little bit so that I can kind of directly reference my original initial ideas for the character so that I wouldn't mix anything up. But the kind of closed eyes kind of vibe is still something I'm thinking about, but the character kind of has kind of a personality expression through their hair. Basically, their hair is pseudo sentient and it kind of like deflates, puffs up, and everything to express her energy and her feelings more than words. Kind of like a cat or a dog's ears, like they perk up, they kind of droop down, things like that. I want it to kind of feel like that for this character, right? And so I think that the eyes are still not super important, but I did have a lot of issues getting the closed eyes look when sketching to kind of come across the way that I wanted it to. I think I'm going to try and do another one off to the side outside of this video and figure it out because I'm not entirely sure what was going on with me, but I have three, at the end of this, I'll have three open-eyed sketches. Now, where it's getting a little bit different is I think that I want to name them Seraphim. And they go by Seraph or Fim, never Sarah for sure. Just kind of suits them for some reason. I don't know why. And I've only ever heard the name Seraphim. I've never really actually kind of thought about its implications, but in my brief research, a seraphim is kind of a celestial being from Judaism. So basically, Judaism, Islam, Christianity kind of things. And they're kind of like an angel, to my understanding. And the wings cover their face region and feet and stuff like that. They kind of like are very kind of like covered up in their six wings. And they're just some sort of like proclamation of holiness. So it's very weird. I'm not entirely sure what the vibe is with them. I've never been really. I've mentioned on my channel before that I'm certain of that I am not personally religious because of some traumatic experiences in my childhood with religious individuals and the church in association to my disability. and I do have a piece on the religious abuse of disabled people and kind of abusive rhetoric towards disabled people. And so religion is just something that doesn't come naturally to me and I don't find myself aligned with personally, so I really don't know anything about it. But I do generally have religious themes in a lot of my work, just not from the modern day Christianity. My work is much more centered in mythology and kind of the religion of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and I do tie a lot of things to Norse mythology as well. And so it does feel kind of appropriate to have a kind of seraphim character in my repertoire. And I did have that closed eye theme initially. So I'm kind of 50-50 on kind of redirecting her a little bit to be kind of an antichrist sort of character, a creature of nature and kind of against the sort of super holy kind of approach. Perhaps like she was named by her parents to originally be kind of this like child of God, and with the intention that she would be raised in the church and be very aligned with the religion of her parents, but they abandoned her for some reason or another, and she found herself in tune with nature and kind of the natural world instead, and she kind of just exists kind of subsequent to that. I don't know, it just feels kind of appropriate for the whole vibe. I did have an entire series like ages ago of kind of like angels in modern environments, and so it does feel like I'm kind of like recircling back to a very old art series I had when I first started character design, except the kind of theme of those was that angels were not inherently good or evil. There was no distinction between an angel versus a demon. Rather, they were simply holy entities of the universe, and they were their namesake. And so the angel would be of thievery, and it would be a kind of accursed sin-based creature, whereas you would have something more akin to like humility, and that would be kind of, it's kind of like a Pandora's box situation, to try and like articulate my younger me's kind of idea and what my hope was for that series, I guess. So the name Seraphim did just kind of come naturally to me, and then I looked it up to make sure I wasn't doing anything completely unhinged, and more importantly to make sure I was spelling it right, because I can't spell to save my life, right? But I do think that bringing in religious themes and basing that in her story, because I did plan for her to be an orphan, and kind of exploring that does create a sense of depth, and it did come naturally, right? Like, the idea for how religion could play a part of her character arc did kind of come naturally, so I don't think I'm pushing it too far or too hard. So I do think I'm going to play around with it a little bit more and maybe see about kind of having that as a basis for her kind of interactions with other people and her interactions with religion in the future. So, especially because I'm not entirely sure which universe she sits in currently. She either sits in the same universe as Eris, who is the reincarnate of the Greek god of chaos, Vivian, who is my kind of vampire slash immortal mad scientist, and Nameless, who is my kind of accursed undead character. So I think she probably fits in that universe, and so all of my characters do have challenges with some level of religious ideology, regardless of the actual religion itself. So I think it kind of fits in the general universe that everybody just has an issue with something or another. Vivian was a Victorian man, so he very much has issues with the kind of 18th century Christian rhetoric. Nameless, I think, probably came from something a little bit more Christian based, probably Catholic. She was originally supposed to be my self-insert character when I first ever designed a character, and my family was raised Italian Catholic, so Nameless would probably also have their religious issues based in Catholicism. Eris is struggling with Greek, ancient Greece based kind of religious ideologies, and so Seraphim having some sort of religious challenge does also make sense as well. And it is kind of something that can unite my characters overall as a kind of like issue. It's definitely not particularly relevant to Nameless's and Vivian's story as much, but it's just kind of that additional flavor and something to think about. Because religion is so important in our modern society, whether you are religious or not is kind of just another mark on your character sheet, right? And then what your religion is a mark on your character sheet as well. And then your experience with religion is very important to shaping your perspectives and your experience with the real world, whether we're aware of it or not, because there's religion and mythology everywhere, right? And all of these things kind of coalesce or congregate together to make us who we are, right? And so it makes sense to just have that kind of thought about, you know what I mean? A lot of my characters are inspired by gods, I guess you could say. So I have Loki, Hypnos, Thanatos, right? And so a lot of them is like, it's obviously what their religious ideology and all of that is. But for my kind of more human-ish characters, it makes sense to account for that because it is just such an important aspect of society, right? And so it is something that I probably would have had to account for eventually, and this one just kind of checked itself off, thankfully, because I really don't like thinking about religion beyond kind of what religion are they, what is their experience with religion, and move on. Like, I don't like having to research, like, what religion makes sense for this character. However, I think if Seraphim were to choose a religion now, she probably would choose to be a Buddhist. I think that very much kind of aligns with the life that she's leading right now, and kind of the sanctity and kind of like the preservation and the peacefulness, inner peace, all of that makes more sense. My grandma's Buddhist, so my perception of Buddhism comes from her, not necessarily the traditional sense, so I'm not 100% certain. I will be looking into it a little bit more just to make sure it does kind of align with Seraphim, but I think she was raised up until a certain age Christian, then kind of abandoned by her family, whether that was through death or just clear up and leaving, and then I think she probably became a Buddhist or found some sort of like witchy earth goddess to worship, which is also very on par, but we'll talk about witchy earth goddesses in a moment. So probably pretty obviously religion's not super my thing, so that was kind of just like a really like lucky initial thought, but let's think about kind of like the actual character design and the like little doodles that I'm working on right now, and kind of the parts of the character that are substantially more actually interesting to me, which is kind of like the personality, the attitude, the hobbies, the activities that they actually kind of work on and spend their time doing. So I wanted to do, I think the issue with this character so far for me is the actual color palette. I've been really thinking on it, and I'm just really not coming up with the perfect color palette, and that usually comes a little bit more naturally to me. I don't intend to actually figure out my color palette this week, so we're just going to be lining these illustrations today. However, I am hoping to either next week have a video where I go over the color palettes, or I'm going to post a poll in my community tab if I work on them and I just don't feel like it's worth the video. That's really up to you guys though. Do you want to see the color palettes and me kind of work through them? I think all three illustrations are going to have a different color palette, or at least slightly different variations, to try and figure out actually which one I want. So currently the vibe is lavender to periwinkle colored hair, a bit of a like medium slash lighter tan toned skin to kind of be the overall mid-tone of the character design. Like, I think the skin is what I want the mid-tone to be, rather than a light or a dark, so that I can have super light hair and then kind of dark but fun clothing. So maybe like a darker shirt but with like a vibrant pop of color, or like fun patches. I haven't figured out what sort of patches I want to do yet, because I think I'm going to just paint pen them on as I go. Like, I think I'm not going to really like care about actually having a consistent patch design for her shirt, because I mentioned in my other video, I think she's totally the type to do like self-embroidery and to like embroider and make her own clothing, or to go to thrift stores and kind of fix things up from there. So I think that it would probably change pretty often, and that they're kind of the sort of kind of person to kind of like restyle the same shirt 50 times, or have a bunch of the same shirt but with slightly different patches and embroidery designs to them. So I don't think I'm going to be like super consistent with that, because I think it suits their character to have it be kind of spontaneous, or like buttons that they regularly like change out. So I don't think it's really going to be something that they're super solid on as a character, and so I don't think I need to worry about it. I think I can go with the flow for myself, and it'll suit the character overall. So I'm thinking either a red tie or a periwinkle tie, you know, something to match the hair, but I'm thinking medium toned skin, super light hair, and then probably a dark shirt, like a dark purple to black, so that they can have super fun, vibrant patches on them. And then probably a neutral toned skirt, maybe a gray or something, and then super fun socks. But I'm really not sure about it, so let me know if you guys want to watch me work through the color palettes with the sketches that I did and line art that I do today, or if you want me to work on it independently and y'all just want to vote. So, because both options are valid options, so let me know in the comments down below, and I will do whatever the majority vote is. If nobody has an opinion, I'll probably do both, or post a poll next week, depending on the video vibe. We'll see how it's going. I think I have a wedding to attend next week or the week after, so we'll figure it out. But regardless, I'm really liking the like super oval cute eyes, and so I'm really torn about the closed eye vibe, because her eyes are so cute. I think she definitely wears makeup that matches her hair color pretty often, like a nice purple eyeshadow or something, which is going to be really difficult with my art style, because I use purple shadows around the eyes all the time to depict extreme debilitating exhaustion, because everybody is exhausted. I have chronic fatigue, so everyone has chronic fatigue, right? So I'm really not sure how over the top I will have to go with makeup for it to look like makeup and not just me coloring in a severely exhausted character. We'll figure it out, but overall, I think that she's definitely probably my most like fun character in terms of style and actual kind of, you know, I guess self-expression. A lot of my characters are very boring and bland because I'm very boring and bland. I wear the same sweater. I wear pajamas almost every day of my life because I don't get to leave the house because of my chronic illness. Even when I leave the house, it's just to the post office, so I still just wear my pajamas because I literally don't care about the locals seeing me in my jammies. Like, bro, I'm not putting on normal clothes to go 15 minutes to the post office and home, right? So I'm very boring, and so I don't really have a lot of fun with my character designs in terms of clothing. It's usually their lore that makes them interesting. They're more bland people in terms of their physical appearance and the way they dress, but, you know, they're a Greek god incarnate. They literally turn themselves immortal trying to save their chronically ill wife. They're a zombie. They're a plant zombie. They're a modern day Hypnos, Thanatos, or Loki, you know what I mean? Like, they're interesting because their existence, like who they are and how they interact is interesting, but they don't themselves have a lot of fun in their actual appearance, which is something I really want to change up because I feel like I just need more fun characters, you know? Even just like the occasional one-off OC, someone who maybe doesn't have an interesting story that I regularly kind of interact with, somebody who is visually interesting to look at for just playing around with new art supplies and just having fun like that is really kind of a need. Because I do have my my mushroom girlies, wrinkled peach mushroom and trumpet of death, and they are definitely pretty fun in general. However, I think that overall is just kind of like, do I want to draw a clown today? No. Do I want to draw my my bubbly blubbering peach mushroom girly? Maybe not, because they do have a pretty strict color palette. They're like very blue toned and then very pink. So, you know, it's just kind of like 50-50, but whatever. So definitely a cutesy character that I can have a lot more fun with is something that I think has been in order for a long time. And I'm very stoked about just them and getting to just draw them having like solo picnics in the woods with rabbits just chilling out, picking berries, birds, you know. They're kind of like, they're kind of Snow Whitey. Snow Whitey, but probably with homicidal tendencies, knowing my OCs and how things tend to work out, but we'll figure that out a little later in the video as well. So we've talked about color palette, kind of their clothing style, and like their kind of thrift upping? What is it called when you flip a thrift item? I'm totally blanking right now. Whoa, weird. But we've talked about their kind of like clothing habits, their environmentally friendly attitude, their animal loving, their currently parentless, living in a cottage in the woods. Let's talk about kind of the sentient hair, the forest magic a little bit, and my other kind of OC who is my bog goddess lover, and how I think that she also kind of fits into that universe, which is separate from Eris, Nameless, and Vivian. So we're going to talk about like what universe she maybe fits into a little bit better and all of my OC lore for her a quick second. So I would say that I probably designed the Bog's bodies back in October or November of 2024, and they are definitely one of my weirder one-off, they're not a one-off OC, but my weirder, less commonly illustrated OCs, and that is because they are strongly inspired by my kind of doom attitude, like my stress for society and our dying planet, but also my love for tales about gods falling in love with mortals and or more mortal creatures, and kind of the love between something that is less than a deity, and those kind of dynamics that are very complicated and convoluted. Because it does have such an extreme power dynamic that I feel like those sorts of romances are incredibly interesting to discuss, because it allows me to kind of process my feelings about those sorts of relationships in real life, and they're very common in media and in fiction, and I have very convoluted and kind of complicated feelings about the matter, and so having that dynamic but framing it in a kind of mythological sense allows me to kind of explore my own opinions on the matters and how I feel about it in fiction versus real life, and if I'm okay with it in fiction versus real life, and also exploring the kind of complicated intricacies of the dynamic that can lead to incredibly toxic behaviors. So that is definitely the dynamic that my Bog's Bodies piece was initially supposed to kind of help me explore. And then I fell in love with the actual lore of it and how it fits into my mushroom universe, which is the other universe. I have like 3 universes, guys. I really need to chill out, y'all. I mean, having 3 worlds is way too much work. Okay, hopefully the mic quality is fixed, but basically the universe that my mushroom people are in is basically humans failed. Humans completely failed to evolve correctly, / mushrooms became so parasitic that they were able to fungally infect humans to the point of mutating them into mushroom people, and they have become the superior race. And I wouldn't say that everything is mushroom people now. I would say that there are other creatures who were already not human, who continue to survive and exist in a now humanless, industrial-free kind of society. It kind of is like stepping back to a more Victorian age style way of living, but with sanitation and healthcare. There's less industrialization because these mushroom people don't have a desire for our kind of human greed and consumerism and our need for things the way that we do. We don't have a need to destroy and clear cut forest because as mushroom people, they're kind of content to live outdoors or in very kind of low quality environments, and they don't process food or not that they don't process food correctly, they don't process food and digest the way that we do because they're kind of half fungi, half human, right? So it is a mostly kind of naturalistic environment, very kind of post-apocalyptic, but without the like huge threat of something insane like zombies, right? Kind of just like post-humanity, effectively. And so my nymph character, who has fallen in love with a goddess of nature, a goddess of harvest and things, she, and her kind of attitude is that she lures people who maybe are on the lesser tier of the mushrooms, and particularly more masculine entities, and humans who have somehow still survived and haven't petrified, because most humans are preserved or petrified, right? That like didn't successfully evolve. She kind of like lures them into the bog to fertilize society. So it's kind of like hunting down the remaining humans. Humans are like an endangered species / basically non-existent. And so basically the kind of lore around that is more so that it's kind of like she has fallen in love with this bog entity and is trying to appease her. She's trying to satisfy her and show her lover that she is committed to her, the goddess, by doing these sacrifices to kind of further and kind of provide nutrients for society. And I don't know that Seraphim is human, and I would say that we're probably coming close to her existing on the cusp of the full revolution, right? Humans are maybe dying out / basically non-existent, and perhaps that's what happened to Seraphim's parents. They did not quite achieve that kind of fungal infection, and were able to evolve to be able to continue to survive, and so she was perhaps orphaned through the kind of process of the apocalyptic situation going on and the destruction of what is remaining of humanity. The question for Seraphim is an allegiance with nature and a tie to nature enough to actually permit her continued survival, or is by putting her in this universe in particular, setting myself up to have a character who is destined to die from the very beginning, or have to evolve through either a fungal infection or by becoming some sort of kind of, I guess, steward of a bog goddess, such as the nymphs often have? Or am I completely setting myself up to have a character who is destined to die from the very beginning if I place her in this universe in particular? Can she become the equivalency of a druid and therefore preserve her life? Or would I have to restructure the lore of an existing universe for her to work? And if that is the case, I don't think it really makes sense, because I think it is important to preserve the kind of environmentalist / post-humanity ideology that this world kind of presents. I'm not a botany major. I'm a botanist. I completed my botany degree, and so kind of the preserving of nature and kind of thinking about the world in terms of if plants were able to completely thrive without humanity's kind of interference, where would we be at, and how would the planet be doing if humans were to have never existed or to have never evolved to the point that we have, is a very interesting talking point for me. And it's a theory that I really like to think about and dwell upon, because we have no way of knowing for complete certain what the world would be like if humans had never gotten to commit what we have committed to the planet of Earth and kind of like the destruction of our atmosphere, the production of fossil fuels, and all of those things, basically the eradication of a bunch of endangered species, right? We don't know what the world would be like if we had never done the things that we had done or never existed in the first place. And so it is something that is an incredibly interesting kind of talking point to me, because how would our existing animals have evolved if we were not inhibiting their ability to evolve by basically destroying things faster than these creatures can adapt to them, right? And that is something that I just find really, really interesting, and I like to play around with and mull in my brain. So I don't really want to destroy this universe or kind of lessen it for the sake of fitting a character in, so I'm not sure that Seraphim truly belongs here. But I also don't really know that she belongs in the world with my other characters without altering her pretty drastically from where she is. I mean, she is kind of almost a druid, but not quite. But I don't really know how she fits into my trio as they exist, and how that dynamic would really exist, and I'm not entirely sure how I want to approach altering that for the sake of fitting her into this world, if that makes sense. And so it's been kind of challenging. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days, and I'm not sure what I want to do with it. However, I do think the third and final kind of possibility, which is a much more daunting possibility that I have to think about, is that she could fit in my Loki saga. So that is something I really wanted to talk about in this video, because if anyone's interested in engaging in the discussion with me, I really do want opinions on this matter, so let's kind of just merge into that topic. The more I seek and try to develop the stories that are constantly playing in my mind, and the more that I try to settle on one particular path, I keep returning to the game that I have talked about a couple of times regarding Loki and his exploration through PTSD post-Ragnarok, where I have altered Ragnarok to not be a world-ending event, but a society and culturally destructive event, wherein Loki, because of how severe the trauma is, both mentally that led up to the point, and physically as he experiences the tumultuous environment as Ragnarok destroys their homeland and the people that they loved, hated, waged wars against, and all of those relationships that had led to this very moment, they lose the majority of their memory, similar to the tale, the Ragnarok incident by the band. The mechanisms, kind of how Loki doesn't recall the situation that led to this moment. They have happy memories of their life, something similar to that, but Loki feels this tumultuous pull, that something is missing in their life, that there's a piece of them that isn't present anymore. They are aware that there is a very intense lack of information in their brain. Something's gone, right? And so they go through the process of exploring the destroyed but also kind of more naturally plentiful post-Ragnarok world, where they meet people along the way who did survive, and they try and start to uncover the memories that they lost due to the experience and the trauma, and they piece together who they were before and try to understand why they would have made the decision that they made. Why would they have led to the moment where they started, initiated, and participated in Ragnarok, as they kind of exist without those experiences, those negative experiences that led to that moment. They don't understand how they ever could have made a decision to possibly kill the people that they loved, alongside the people that had harmed them so greatly. And they try to kind of uncover their own past and deal with the grief post-Ragnarok as somebody who caused it, and try to understand why they would do such a thing, but also as they try to figure out who they are now, and as their memories come back to them, as they read tomes, interact with people whom they had known prior, people who have survived, And as they find elements of their life before, they start to not quite understand how they could have done it, but they start to understand that they were a very different person before, and they have to grapple with who they were, who they are now, and who they truly are as they kind of piece together what was missing of themselves. And Seraphim, while they exist definitely from a kind of Christian kind of rhetoric, initially, I think, and it very much suits them, and they're probably Buddhist now, I very much believe in and follow this ideology that all of these mythologies are existing in tandem simultaneously with each other. So while Loki may have ended the majority of the Norse gods and the Nordic society, I don't know that they necessarily ended, say, Greek and Roman society or Egyptian society. And it's almost like bubbles and kind of like little ecosystems owned by gods that people believed in. And I think that Seraphim could very much be somebody who travels with them along this journey or meets them part way through and helps them to understand kind of the self-discovery that needs to happen when you've experienced something so terrible, and trying to kind of piece yourself together and understanding who you are now and how do you become the person that you want to be. Because I think that my Loki understands that what they did was wrong and that it was a horrible decision, and I think that they are burdened strongly with the regret of what they did. But how do you acknowledge and realize that regret and confront that burden that you're experiencing and then continue to live forward and become a better person? And I don't like the idea of Loki going through this experience entirely alone, or just with people who probably hate Loki for what they did and do not wish to give him a second chance at life and a second chance at being a better person, or kind of fixing their mistakes and rebuilding their own culture again, and telling the stories that they are remembering, because Loki is the god of stories. And I think that learning to tell his own story and figuring out the stories that he lost and kind of reformulating all of that is very quintessential to this experience. And I've always known that I needed to design a character who would travel with Loki at least to an extent, or guide him, or be a place for them to return to be able to seek refuge while they kind of grapple with these experiences, because healing is a long, long process. And I think Seraphim might be a good character for that, because they are kind of otherworldly in their own capacity. They do not have an allegiance to one particular religion wholeheartedly. While I think they are likely more Buddhist in nature, I don't think that they are strong and dedicated to any one religion. They're more dedicated to the philosophies and the morals, and seeking comfort in the ideas of a religion, but not necessarily the gods that come with it. And I think that they could be a very good character to kind of mold and shape for this purpose. Now, I want this to be a video game. I don't necessarily know how to make a video game, and I don't know how to make a good video game either. So I think what I want to do and how I'm going to approach it is I'm going to write the script for it, and then I'm going to design it as a comic mostly, and kind of create this kind of sketched out comic experience that reads kind of like a video game, and kind of approach it that way. Because I don't necessarily think that I have the skill set necessary to create a video game all by myself, nor do I think that I have the confidence to do that right where I am, but I know that I have the confidence to create a comic, and I think that Seraphim fits in this world quite well. However, I very much am interested in your guys' opinion, and if you are interested in this story, I'm thinking about maybe doing videos off on the side that I don't post to my channel, but post somewhere. I haven't figured out where yet, obviously. where I go through a like script writing workbook or something and try and figure out these thoughts, and I approach doing my research on maybe live streams and things like that to kind of make sure that this is the best it can possibly be, because I just want this story to exist in the world somewhere, because it's something that I think that I've needed for a very long time, and I keep dwelling on it and I keep returning to it. It's not an idea that slips away, or I think about it for a week or two and then it vanishes into the mist. I keep returning to wanting to do this exploration of my OC Loki, and maybe just kind of redesigning Loki to be more strict to Norse mythology and who they are in that sense, and then exploring it that way. But I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not entirely sure how interesting this is to other people, because I do have so much of myself in this idea of rebuilding who you are post-trauma, and it is something that kind of fits into my disability and mental health series to an extent, just with a bit more kind of public appeal flavor to it, I suppose. And I'm not sure if I'm too in the weeds, if that makes sense. Like, am I too emotionally and mentally invested in my own idea to realize it's not a good idea? But I think Seraphim could be like a main hub. If this were a video game, Seraphim's house would perhaps be like the round table, basically. You know what I mean? You go there to kind of not necessarily level up, but you go there to rest, to recoup, to have some sort of familiarity. You go there to collect stories, and perhaps while Seraphim gathers what they can to help Loki in their journey of figuring out who they are now. Seraphim is like the sweet sidekick, but less annoying, you know what I mean? Like the little fairy thingy that follows you in like half of the Zelda games, it's not that, okay? I hate that thing. It is why I don't finish half of the Zelda games I've started. I can't stand it. Whatever that thing is and whatever it's called, I hate it so much that I just quit. It's not like the handler in Monster Hunter, where like you just cannot get rid of this woman for 5 minutes. I think maybe possibly some quest, if this were a video game, could have her accompany, she'll help guide through the forest, or she'll help kind of recount some of the ways that the world had to kind of rebuild post Ragnarok, because I don't think that Loki was awake immediately after Ragnarok. I think a lot of time has passed while Loki didn't quite realize what happened, whether they were asleep recovering from the injuries that came with Ragnarok, or whether or not they were perhaps living life not realizing who they actually were. I'm not sure yet, but it's something that I need to explore. But I like the idea that the forest has regrown, and a lot of these tales have been morphed by time and by the natural world as it tries to move on post-destruction. And I think that it creates a lot more room for beautiful environments, because it is not exclusively a battlefield. It's not exclusively a completely destroyed version of the world. It has tried to rebuild itself post the experience, and that creates a lot more intrigue, at least in my opinion, because I hate desolate fields, okay? I don't want to see any open expanse areas that I have to walk through in a video game. I at least want visual intrigue of plants. As inconvenient as they can be, I want something to visually stimulate me and intricate environments for me to care about and get distracted by and lost in, right? And so I feel like Seraphim can be a guide to an extent, but they're definitely someone you can leave at her house. You go back for a nice pie and chill, and you're just like, hi, did you find any good books, any good tales that the people who hate me refuse to tell me because they want to burn me at the stake kind of thing. You can be like, you want to walk with me through the forest while I kind of process my grief? And it's like, you can do that, but you don't have to have her with you. And I feel like that's a very kind of healthy balance between the tour guide and the super annoying sidekick that you just really want to get rid of because it is constantly in your way, you know? And, you know, maybe she goes to serve as a tutorial character. I keep thinking about it like a video game, but I really don't know how to make a video game, and I'm scared. I don't want to do it alone, and I don't know how to approach it. So, you know, a comic feels like the middle ground, you know. But that gives me 2 comics to work on too, because I do have my little comic stories that I've been working on the side for my Mushroom Girlies, which I was hoping to do a publication for Pride Month because they're, you know, mushroom lesbians, but I have just not been able to get this story down right, and it has been causing me a lot of issues, so I don't think I'm going to get it out by the end of June, but I'm going to keep trying. But this Loki idea is also very much enticing and pulling me, and so I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how to manage these 2 ideas, and I'm not entirely sure if people want to see it and hear it and kind of listen to it, you know? This isn't helped by any means by the fact that I met my new MFA professor this week. I don't know if she's going to be an MFA professor for the whole year, or if she's just coming on for the summer, because I have another MFA professor this summer exclusive. I absolutely love them though, so super stoked to get to see him next week. But anyway, I met her for the first time, and we were talking about these ideas and this weird kind of boundary that I've come across where I want people to like my work, and because I want people to like my work, I don't allow myself to pursue larger projects where I'm worried that I might fail or I might not be able to commit to that initial idea, you know, like, can I commit and actually create something that is worth calling a comic or a graphic novel? Do I have enough story to tell that people won't be disappointed in me if I find that perhaps I don't have enough stories yet, or I don't know how to develop a world enough yet to do it? And I've been struggling with that kind of discomfort, perhaps, or maybe it's the fear of failure. And she reminded me of the part about being a beginner artist that feels the best, and it's the part that I've kind of lost in my time since I started taking art seriously and treating it as something that I might spend the rest of my life doing in some sort of professional capacity. Sure, an art teacher, but still, it's a professional capacity. And so now there's something at stake. It feels like there's something to lose. And that alone has created this issue where, because I'm nervous and scared of failure like I wasn't before, I'm not confident enough to commit to just enjoying art the way I used to. When you're not scared of failure, you can create art without hindrance and without nerves, because it doesn't matter if it doesn't look bad, because you're not scared of the failure that will come, and you're not scared to confront the disappointment of not achieving something correctly the first try. And because of that, I have stopped myself from publishing and sharing my comics on a large scale like I want to, because I'm scared that there isn't enough to draw people in, and I'm scared that there isn't enough to make people care, or that I'm not a good enough storyteller to actually make people want to stay. And because of that, I'm just not doing, instead of doing it and just accepting that if it doesn't go right the first time, I can just rewrite it, you know? There's nothing wrong with reworking old art, and there's nothing wrong with me writing this story and then changing it throughout the entirety of the comic. There's nothing wrong with me doing it wrong the first time, not liking my first draft of the script, and then just rewriting it all together. There's nothing stopping me from failing first so that I can succeed second. And I'm not gonna succeed the first time. You know, I've never done this before, so I can't expect to create something perfect on my very first try. And because I can't expect it, I'm just kind of hindering myself and stopping myself from creating the work that I really want to create. And I guess I'm doing that by saying that I don't have the confidence to make it a video game yet either, but I think I have to put a lot of extra work into making that skill set and designing that skill set, and that comics is perhaps the best middle ground before I get there. I want to learn how to tell a good story before I put extra work into figuring out how to make a game where the story is kind of everything. And so at the end of the day, this is kind of the middle of the road, you know? I can make a game out of my comic later if it works. And maybe I won't want to make a game. Maybe I'll find that the comic is the perfect format. Maybe I'll find that not having an open world where you can discover things at your own pace is okay. And maybe the comic is a choose your own adventure. I don't know yet because I haven't made it. But perhaps I pick the characters who are super important in Loki's life, and you can choose which chapter you read first, and they are self-isolated. And perhaps at the end, once you've read 5 of them, they will coalesce into something bigger. But for now, you will go through the people who were important, and you will walk through that path at the pace that you want to. And so, like one-shots, like fan-fiction one-shots, you know? You pick which one-shot you want to read, and maybe you read them all, or maybe you don't. And each character will have a lesson to learn about the self, you know, probably tied to who they are as a god. A tale about them in Loki that exists already and is repurposed in the story through my own interpretation of the lore and the moral, or maybe it will be a story that I create. A memory that doesn't exist naturally to the world but makes sense for who they are. And I will process it that way. And I think that I need to just do it, because if I continue to stop myself from committing, I am going to probably never have the confidence to explore the story the way that I want to. And that's what this conversation with my MFA professor really allowed me to re-acknowledge, that as long as I'm scared of failure, I'm never going to succeed the way that I want to, because I'm never going to start. And I know deep down that starting is important, and I'm comfortable and happy to fail in a lot of other aspects artistically. I'm happy to create art that I don't love. I'm happy to rework sketches, but when it's something that's kind of out of field or a longer term project, all of a sudden failure feels so much more impactful and so much more terrifying. And that's not even accounting for the fact that who's to define failure other than me? And is it truly a failure if I just create something? Is it truly a failure if I do something interesting and I learn along the way and I learn all of these lessons that I deem important for future projects? I don't think it really is. Just because the first round doesn't work the way I want it to doesn't mean that it's a complete bust. And maybe I'll fall in love with it in the future and it'll feel important or good and I'll like it. But I need to commit to that. I need to do that first. I'm not going to be able to see what I want to see if I don't try. And I hope that that resonates with someone out there who is perhaps feeling art blocked or discouraged artistically, because it was something that was so prevalent and obvious to me when I was a beginner artist. I couldn't get better if I didn't fail first. But now that I have some sort of skill set, failure feels all that more daunting, because I feel like I should be better than that. And nobody is above or better than failure. Nobody is above or better than having to struggle to get to the end result that they want. And it was a very important lesson to have to confront now. And I'm glad that I confronted that issue that I've been dealing with now instead of in a couple of years. Because that comic can be done in a couple of years, you know? That comic could be published for all I know in a couple of years. But it won't be if I don't do it. It won't be if I don't try, and it won't be if I don't start. And there's no better time than the present to try and unearth a new skill, because frankly, at the end of the day, I don't have to put any money into this project. It is simply my own art project. And if people want to read it with me and go through the process together, that is excellent. And if you guys want to hear about it, I would really love to share it with you, but if I just hold myself back, it's never going to happen. So I'm going to start drafting some of that story. I have a workbook on writing stories that I've been meaning to utilize for years, because obviously I have commitment issues to my own stories, And so I'm going to start working through it, and if you guys are interested in seeing scans of that or watching me go through that process, let me know. Other than that, I will eventually have pages published somewhere to look at. Whether they're good or not is entirely up in the air, but I'm very excited for this path, and it's very much something enchanting me, and I hope that Seraphim can fit into this universe, because I think it's what feels best for her, but based on the other universes that I've talked about, let me know if you feel like any of them fit better. I feel like she really has a chance in all of them, and that's why it's a hard decision for me to make. I suppose 30 years of convoluted yapping later, I should actually talk about the illustrations before the video ends, and I've yapped about nothing the whole time. But basically, we are finally to the sketch and the lining part that I actually was kind of really nervous about, and I ended up making a lot of design decision changes in the middle of lining, because I have commitment issues to my own sketches. I can't actually, care and follow through the first time, but I really, really liked the leotard of the one sketch, and the booty shorts, biker shorts that I had going on, and this one just wasn't speaking to me. I wasn't loving it, and so I did kind of decide to completely just crop that line where the shorts are, and commit to the leotard in both of the sketches, which is a little bit like a horrible decision, because this red mechanical pencil that I use is really difficult to erase. Like, it's an almost impossible task, so it becomes incredibly difficult to cover up things that I'm not intending to hatch if it's not a super dark color. And I wasn't planning on having the leotard be a dark color. I didn't mention it in the color palettes because I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but I'm thinking the leotard would be one of those super vibrant colors that just kind of pops with the darker clothing palette and is bright against the mid-tone skin. Because it has like the skirt to it has the skirt to kind of like detract away from the actual kind of fit overall, and like the bright hair, it just kind of, it would be a nice balance, like a dark top, maybe a darker skirt, or a neutral skirt, and then the bright leotard, it just kind of felt right to me. And then it would kind of complement the lavender hair. The lavender hair does kind of go throughout the entire piece because I've decided to make it even longer than my initial sketch idea, but it will help keep the flow, and I don't know, I just liked the idea. And so I'm gonna either have to really shade her rump, or I'm going to have to erase religiously and hope that the mid-tone doesn't end up looking super splotchy and weird just on the rump. I'm not entirely sure what the best option for this is yet, because I haven't rendered them. I'm not rendering them this week. I have decided I can't render this week. I do not have the brain capacity for it. So these are getting colored over the weekend, and my videos go up on Saturday, so I won't be able to put it in this video. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry. But I'm not sure. I've also never rendered on this paper before. This is a new pack of mini paper, and it might just not handle marker well at all, and this might be the worst idea I've ever had. And I have yet to find out. This could be 3 layers of crisis that I didn't even consider when committing to this original idea. So I am a little bit worried, a little nervous, and I'm not entirely sure what's gonna happen, but it's fine. It's fine. We're nothing if not chaotic and unprofessional on this channel, apparently, because I can't be bothered to test my paper ever. So I'm obviously going to have to face the consequences of my actions and poor decisions later in life, as always, but I'm not entirely sure how the shaded in butt region is going to go for me, and I'm a little nervous about it, but I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. She might just have an uber shaded butt, but that's okay. That's okay. Heavy lighting, we'll figure it out, I've saved drawings that have had worse issues than this, so yeah. But as I'm going through the process, I'm just kind of like not loving this actual kind of line art. Like, I think that by the time I was here, I was so not sure about what I was doing and so out of it, because this was super late at night on my end, that I was just committed to failure at this rate. Like, are these eggs? Are they apples? What is in this basket? Who knows? I can't tell you. I haven't colored them yet, so I can't tell you. Are they a foreign fruit that doesn't exist? Are they kiwis? They might be kiwis. I don't know yet. It's not going great. And then I hatched the basket, and it just goes worse. But the thing about the basket hatching, I mostly hatched it to remind myself that I wanted a pattern. The basket is almost guaranteed, just based on my weird drawing habits, to end up paint penned over pretty thoroughly. So I kind of knew when hatching it that I didn't need to care, because I'm going to be probably painting on a wicker texture and not actually keeping this line art. Like, this line art is exclusively extra work to help me understand my own drawing, because I am pretty scatterbrained and I'm pretty prone to just forgetting what my original plan was, and then I fumble harder later. So the botched hatching was kind of, it wasn't intentional, like I didn't intentionally do a bad job, but I didn't care about doing a good job, if that makes sense. And so that I'm not too worried about, but it looks really bad right now, and I'm aware. And I want to acknowledge that it looks really bad, so I'm sorry. But I promise when rendered, you're not even gonna, like, know the hatching was there, or it's going to be so not prevalent that it'll be fine. But I'm thinking about the different, like, weaves that I want to do, and I haven't really figured out a weave yet. Like, I've been looking at different kind of wicker basket kind of textures and hand-woven basket looks, and I just haven't figured out the one that I want or found the perfect basket texture yet, and so it's kind of also a placeholder until I find the right thing. So it's fine. It's ugly, but it's fine. And this is also my first time lining in a really long time, which has been kind of a weird thing to have to, like, acknowledge. Like, I used to exclusively do line art. Line art used to be my thing, but with how I've been rendering recently, I've been doing my line art after all of the hard work of rendering, and so actually lining beforehand was kind of difficult. I'm going to end up paint penning over most of this, probably, which is why I'm not super careful with a lot of my lines, and I don't really care about making the hair kind of cohesive and make sense or anything like that. Because, like, I'm aware that the markers is going to make the line art kind of hard to read, and I'm going to have to thicken certain lines, and then because I'm so bad at using markers and I paint pen over 90% of my work to try and make it look less awful, it's going to end up covered eventually, and I'm going to have to re-go over it. So this line art is really just extra work, but for my own satisfaction. Like, I did this because it made me happy, and it just felt right. It was a lot less about actually being a guideline for me to follow. If the line art had turned out good, I probably would have scanned it to at least preserve to maybe do something with digitally, but it definitely is not my best line art work, you know? It's not preservation quality, that's for sure. And so I'm gonna just kind of slide on by, kind of mentally and emotionally from it, and just kind of hope it grows on me. And I kind of started treating my pen as a sketching material, which was also a secondary horrible decision. I really should not be allowed to have permanent art supplies before I'm committed to an idea. I really just kind of give up on the sketching process, and I'm like, oh, if I line it and I make decisions while lining, it'll be fine, you know? It'll be cool. I know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a liar. I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know I was a liar until I said I know what I'm doing, because I know I don't know what I'm doing, right? And I just make terrible decisions. I really just should not be allowed to do art after like 9 p.m. I'm a senior citizen. My bedtime should be 8:30 probably, if anything. So it got a little bit messy, but I promise it'll turn out okay next week when I finish these. If you want to see me finish them and watch me go through the rendering process once again, comment down below so I know you guys want to see it. I probably will post a poll asking what you guys want to see in next week's video as well, because I do have a couple ideas for what I want to do next week. And I do have a lot of things I want to do this weekend as well, artistically speaking, so, you know, I'll probably put up a poll and I'll try and associate it with this video just so that anybody who's confused about the options can kind of redirect here. But I will also probably have the poll scheduled to go up with this video. So if you want to vote in what next week's video is on, be sure to go to my community tab, because I don't think I'm able to link community tabs. I'll try, and vote over there if the comments is not your jam. And if you like polls, I like polls. I go to polls just to vote in them, even if I don't really understand what's happening, because polls are fun and they make me happy and I like the percents. If it wasn't debatably public harassment, I would probably also make a poll about what jam flavor her jam earrings are, but that one is probably something that changes out regularly enough that I don't need to harass you guys, and the poll would be exclusively for my own curiosity about y'all's favorite jam flavors, and I think that that is probably not something people actually care about as much as I care about. But my favorite jam is strawberry jam, and it is great. My brother likes grape jam, and I hate grape jam. I hate grape flavored everything. So, you know, if you're interested, there's the information. You have it now. But I think she probably changes out her jam flavor earrings pretty often. But I have a feeling her favorite jam flavor might be marmalade. And I don't know what that is, but something about her just screams marmalade. And I kind of hate it, but I respect it. So I'm not sure what to do with this information, but I have a feeling. But I don't know. I don't jive with it, but it just feels right. You know what I mean? You know when you're designing a character and just the decision makes itself? That's how I feel about the earrings, okay? It's probably marmalade and I hate it, but that's okay. I would eat marmalade jam before grape jam, but no one cares about my jam preference. I need to shut up. Okay, so, last couple thoughts about the character design as it's existing currently. I very much like the shorter skirt leotard vibe. However, I think the longer skirt is also cute. I think for the longer skirt designs, when I have her in that outfit, I'm going to have extra patches that I render on in Paint Pens later, or something to add pizzazz to the skirt. I don't think she's a pattern girly. She doesn't give pattern energy. If anything, if any pattern, I'm thinking maybe pinstripes, but I don't want to render pinstripes, so we're going to go with no patterns. And like patches and stuff. Like I feel like she has like a really thick, durable skirt because it's like sticking up and it's really not falling with the flow of gravity super well. So I think a thick skirt with patches makes a lot of sense for the character design when it's a longer skirt, less patches when it's a leotard. You know, not overwhelming the senses, but definitely a bit much, I guess you could say. Like, I think she has at least one skirt that's her, like, patch skirt that's just basically all patches, no skirt. Lady Gaga energy, you know, probably actually just made a skirt out of patches, no skirt base, just completely made it from scratch, because why not? You know, that's the kind of vibe we're talking when it comes to crafty and kind of, like, upcycling the clothing, you know. Definitely questionable, definitely on the, like, weirder end of like life decisions, probably stressful, definitely required a lot of snacks, but it's okay, you know, we love her for it, and I don't want to render it more than once, so it's just like a canon item that we as a community can acknowledge exist, but also understand that there is absolutely no universe in which I can consistently draw a skirt that is entirely made out of patches, because I think I would actually lose my mind, and I'm really bad at patterns. Like, I don't have pattern recognition abilities outside of proper, like, practical attire, you know? So, I don't think if I had to render it, it would be anywhere as comprehensible as it should be. So, we'll acknowledge it's canon, but if I draw it ever, it's only getting drawn once, because it would never look the same twice. It would be too complicated. I wouldn't be able to keep up with it, but that's kind of an aside. I've definitely yapped for way too long, as always, and I should probably set you guys free soon, so let's move on to the outro. Thank you so much for watching all the way through to the end of this video. I really appreciate you guys staying here with me and chilling out for a little while. I hope you really liked the art that I did throughout this video and the conversations. I had a lot of questions throughout this video, so if you want to kind of respond to any of them in the comments down below, I try to reply to every comment, and I usually get notified of them all. So I will reply to you, and we can chat about ideas down in the comments. If you have any ideas for the characters I've talked about, be sure to let me know. And I suppose like if you like, dislike if you dislike, subscribe if you would like to see more of my content. You can also check the card up above or click on my name if you would like to see more videos from me before committing to being yapped at every Saturday at 9 a.m. But I suppose with all of this being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are, and bye-bye!